came along and read the publicity. So we have Lynda Carlson today, reading from Nora.
Thank you. I want you to know that I'm wearing a New York outfit, all black. Let me just set this. Pardon me? Nora Ephron died about 15 years ago, and she wrote a lot of books and movies that we've all seen. When Harry Met Sally, and You've Got Mail, and Heartburn. And Heartburn is she had been married to Bernstein of Woodward and Bernstein, and he had an affair with the Australian wife, and so she got even with that book. And okay, this chapter is I feel bad about my neck. I feel bad about my neck. I do. If you saw my neck, you might feel bad about it too, but you'd probably be too polite to let on. If I said something to you on the subject, something like, I absolutely cannot stand my neck, you'd undoubtedly respond by saying something nice like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. You'd be lying, of course, but I forgive you. I tell lies like that all the time, mostly to friends who tell me they're upset because they have little pouches under their eyes, or jowls, or wrinkles, or flab around the middle. And I do think they should have an eye job, or a facelift, or Botox, or liposuction. My experience is that I don't know what you're talking about is code for. I see what you mean, but if you think you're going to trap me into engaging on this subject, you're crazy. It's dangerous to engage on such subjects, and we all know it. Because if I said, yes, I see exactly what you mean, my friend might go out and have her eyes done, for instance, and it might not work, and she might end up being one of those people you read about in tabloids who end up in court suing their plastic surgeons because they can never close their eyes again. Furthermore, and this is the point, it would be all my fault. I am particularly sensitive to the all my fault aspect of things, since I have never forgiven one of my friends for telling me not to buy a perfectly good apartment on East 75th Street in 1976. Sometimes I go to lunch with my girlfriends. I got that far into the sentence and caught myself. I suppose I mean my women friends. We are no longer girls and have not been girls for 40 years at least. Anyway, sometimes we go out to lunch and I look around the table and realize we're all wearing turtleneck sweaters. Sometimes instead we're all wearing scarves, like Katharine Hepburn, in Golden Pond. Sometimes we're all wearing mandarin columns and look like a white lady's version of the Joy Luck Cub. It's sort of funny and it's sort of sad because we're not neurotic about age. None of us lies about how old she is, for instance, and none of us dresses up in a way that's inappropriate for our years. We all look good for our age, except for our necks. Oh, the necks. There are chicken necks, there are turkey gobbler necks, there are elephant necks, there are necks with wattles and necks with creases that are on the verge of becoming wattles. There are scrawny necks and fat necks, loose necks, creepy necks, banded necks, wrinkled necks, stringy necks, saggy necks, flabby necks, mottled necks. There are necks that are an amazing combination of all the above. According to my dermatologist, the neck starts to go at 43. And that's that. You can put makeup on your face and concealer under your eyes and dye on your hair. You can shoot collagen and Botox and Restylane into your wrinkles and creases, but short of surgery, there's not a damn thing you can do about a neck. The neck is a dead giveaway. Our faces are lies and our necks are the truth. You have to cut open a redwood tree to see how old it is, but you wouldn't have to do it with my neck. My own experience with my neck began shortly before I turned 43. I had an operation that left me with a terrible scar just above the collarbone. It was shocking because I learned the hard way that just because a doctor was a famous surgeon didn't mean he has any gift for sewing people up. If you learn nothing else from reading this essay, dear reader, learn this. Never have an operation on any part of your body without asking a plastic surgeon to come stand by in the operating room and keep an eye out. Because if you are being operated on for something serious or potentially serious, even if you honestly believe that your health is more important than vanity, even if you wake up in the hospital room thrilled beyond imagining that it wasn't cancer, even if you feel elated, grateful to be alive, full of blinding insight about what's important and what's not, even if you vow to be eternally joyful about being on the planet, Earth and promise never to complain about anything ever again. I promise you that one day soon, sooner than you imagine, you will look in the mirror and think, I hate this scar. Assuming, of course, that you look in the mirror. That's another thing about being a certain age that I've noticed. I try as much as possible not to look in the mirror. I began by squinting so that if anything really bad is looking back at me, I am already halfway to closing my eyes to ward off the sight. And if the light is good, which I hope it's not, I often do what so many women my age do when stuck in front of a mirror. I gently pull the skin of my neck back and stare wistfully as a younger version of myself. Here's something else I've noticed, by the way. If you want to get really, really depressed about your neck, sit in the back seat of a car right behind the driver and look at yourself in the rear view mirror. What is it about rear view mirrors? I have no idea why, but there are no worse mirrors where necks are concerned. It's one of the genuinely compelling mysteries of modern life, right up there with why the cold water in the bathroom is colder than the cold water in the kitchen. It's that way in our house. But my neck, this is about my neck. And I know what you're thinking. Why not go to a plastic surgeon? I'll tell you why not. If you go to a plastic surgeon and say, I'd like you to just fix up my neck, he will tell you flat out that he can't do it without giving you a facelift too. And he's not lying. He's not trying to con you into spending more money. The fact is, it's all one big ball of wax. If you tighten up your neck, you've also got to tighten up the face. But I don't want a facelift. If I were a muffin and had a nice round puffy face, I would bite the bullet. Muffins are perfect candidates for this sort of thing. But I am, alas, a bird, and if I had a facelift, my neck would be improved, no question, but my face would end up pulled and tight. I would rather squint at this sorry face and neck of mine in the mirror than confront a stranger who looks suspiciously like a drum pad. Every so often, I read a book about age, and who's ever writing it says it's great to be old. It's great to be wise and sage and mellow. It's great to be at the point where you understand what matters in life. I can't stand people who say things like that. What can they be thinking of? Don't they have necks? Aren't they tired of compensatory dressing? Don't they mind that 90% of the clothes they might otherwise buy have to be eliminated simply because of the necklines? Don't they feel sad about having to buy chokers? One of my biggest regrets, bigger even than buying the apartment on East 75th Street, bigger even than my worst romantic catastrophe, is that I didn't spend my youth staring lovingly at my neck. It never crossed my mind to be grateful for it. It never crossed my mind that I should be nostalgic about a part of my body that I took completely for granted. Of course, it's true that now that I'm older, I'm wise and sage and mellow. And it's also true that I honestly do not understand what matters in life. But guess what? It's my neck. The next one I'm going to read is called On Maintenance. I have been trying for weeks to write about maintenance, but it hasn't been easy, and for a simple reason. Maintenance takes up so much of my life that I have barely time to sit down at the computer. You know what maintenance is, I'm sure. Maintenance is what they mean when they say, after a certain point, it's just patch, patch, patch. Maintenance is what you have to do so you can walk out the door knowing that if you go to the market and bump into a guy who once rejected you, you won't have to hide between a stack of canned food. I don't need to be too literal about this. There are a couple of old boyfriends whom I always worry about bumping into, but there's no chance, if I ever did, that I would recognize any of them. On top of what they live in other cities. But the point is that I still think about them every time I'm tempted to leave the house without eyeliner. There are two types of maintenance, of course. There's status quo maintenance, the things you have to do daily or weekly or monthly, just to stay more or less even. And then there's the maintenance you have to do monthly or yearly or even every couple of years or so. Maintenance, I think of as a pathetic attempts to turn back the clock. Into this category fall such things as facelifts, liposuction, Botox, major dental work, and removal of unsightly things of various varicose veins, for instance, and skin tags, and those irritating little red spots that crop on your torso after a certain age for no real reason. I'm not going to discuss such issues here. For now, I'm concentrating only on the routine, everyday things required to keep you from looking like someone who no longer cares. Hair, we begin. I'm sorry to say, with hair, I'm sorry to say it because the amount of maintenance involving hair is genuinely overwhelming. Sometimes I think that not having to worry about your hair anymore is the secret upside of death. Tell the truth. Aren't you sick of your hair? Aren't you tired of washing and drying it? I know people who wash their hair every day, and I don't get it. Your hair doesn't need to be washed every day any more than your black pants have to be dry cleaned every time you wear them. But no one listens to me. It takes some of my friends an hour a day, 7 days a week, just to wash and blow dry their hair. How they manage to have any sort at all of a life is a mystery. I mean, we're talking about 365 hours a year, 9 work weeks. Maybe this made sense when we were young, when the amount of time we spent making ourselves look good bore some correlation to the number of hours we spent having sex, which was, after all, one of the reasons for our spending so much time on grooming. But now that we're older, whom are we kidding? On top of which, have you tried buying shampoo lately? I mean, good luck to you. Good luck finding anything that says on its label simply shampoo. There are shampoos for dry hair on the label, but oily hair, and shampoos for coarse but fine hair. And then there are the conditioners and the straighteners and the volumizer. How damaged does your hair have to be to qualify as damaged? Why do some shampoos for blondes? Do the blondes get better shampoo than the rest of us? It's totally dizzying, the shelf after shelf of products, not one of them capable of doing the job alone. I deal with all this confusion by taking draconian measures to remove the amount of time I spend on my hair. I never do my own hair if I can help it. And I try best to avoid situations that will require me to do so. Every so often, a rich friend asks if I'd like to go on a trip involving a boat, and all I can think about is the misery of 5 days in a small cabin struggling with a blow dryer. And I am never going back to Africa. The last time I was there in 1972, there were no hairdressers out in the bush. And as far as I was concerned, that was the end of that place. I'm in awe of the women I know who have magical haircuts that require next to no maintenance. I envy all Asian women. I mean, have you ever seen an Asian woman whose hair looks bad? No, you haven't. Why is this? I once read an interview with a well known actress who said that the thing she was proudest of was that she could blow dry her own hair, and I was depressed for days afterwards. I'm completely inept at blow drying my own hair. I have the equipment and the products, I assure you. I own blow dryers with special attachments and hot rollers and Velcro rollers and gel and mousse and spray, but my hair looks absolutely awful and I do it myself. So twice a week, I go to a beauty parlor and have my hair blow dried. It's cheaper by far than psychoanalysis and much more uplifting. What's more, it takes much less time than washing and drying your own hair every single day, especially if, like me, you live in a large city where a good and reasonably priced hairdresser is just around the corner. Still, at the end of the year, I've spent at least 80 hours just keeping my hair clean and pressed. That's 2 work weeks. There's no telling what I could be doing with all that time. I could be on eBay, for instance, buying something that will turn out to be worth much less than I bid for. I could be reading good books. Of course, I could be reading good books while having my hair done, but I don't. I always mean to. I always take one with me when I go to the salon, but instead of ending up reading, end up reading the fashion magazines that are lying around, and I mostly concentrate on articles about cosmetic and surgical procedure. Once I picked up a copy of Vogue while having my hair done, and it cost me $25,000, but you should see my teeth. I'm going to do one more section. I might go over a little bit. Hair dye. Many years ago, when Gloria Steinem turned 40, someone complimented her on how remarkably young she looked, and she replies, "This is what 40 looks like." It was a great line, and I wish I'd said it. This is what 40 looks like led inevitably to its most significant correlate. 40 is the new 30, which led to many other corollaries. 50 is the new 40, 60 is the new 50, and even restaurants are the new theater. Focaccia is the new quiche, etc. Anyway, here's the point. There's a reason why 40, 50, and 60 don't look the way they used to, and it's not because of feminism or better living through exercise. It's because of hair dyeing. In the 1950s, only 7% of American women dyed their hair. Today, there are parts of Manhattan and Los Angeles where there are no gray-haired ladies at all. Once, some years ago, I went to Le Cirque, a well-known New York restaurant, for a lunch in honor of a woman called Jean Harris, who had just that week been released from 12 years in prison for murdering her diet doctor boyfriend. And she was the only woman in the restaurant with gray hair. Hair dye has changed everything, but it almost never gets the credit. It's the most powerful weapon older women have against the youth culture, and because it actually succeeds in stopping the clock, at least where your hair color is concerned. It makes women open to far more drastic procedures like facelifts. I can make a case that it's at least partially responsible for the number of women entering and managing to stay in the job market in middle and late middle age, as well as for all sorts of fashion trends. For example, it's one of the reasons women don't wear hats anymore. And it's entirely that reason that everyone I know has a closet full of black clothes. Think about it. 50 years ago, women of a certain age almost never wore black. Black was for widows, specifically for Italian war widows. And even Gloria Steinem might concede that the average Italian war widow made you believe that 60 was the new 75. If you have gray hair, black makes you look just older, not just older, but sadder. But black looks great on older women with dark hair. So great, in fact, that even younger women with dark hair now wear black. Most everyone wears black, except for anchor women. United States senators and residents of Texas, and I feel really bad for them. I mean, black makes your life so much simpler. Everything matches with black, especially black. But back to hair dye. I began having my hair dyed about 15 years ago, and for many years I was categorized by my colorist as a single process customer, whatever that was being done to me, which I honestly had no idea how to describe, did not involve peroxide, and therefore took only 90 minutes every 6 weeks or so. Whenever I complained about how long it took, I was told that I was lucky I wasn't blonde. Where hair dye is concerned, being blonde is practically a career. Oh, the poor blondes. They were sitting there at the colorist when I arrived, and they were still sitting there when I left. Their scalps were suctioned off and dotted with little aluminum foil packets. They had to sit under hair dryers. They complained bitterly about their dry and damaged hair and their chronic split ends. I felt superior to them in every way. For the first time in my life, it seemed there was an advantage to being a brunette. But then, about a year ago, my colorist gave me several highlights as a present. Highlights, you probably know, are little episodes of blondness that are scattered about your head. They involve peroxide, the extent in the length of time involved in hair dyeing from unbearable to unendurable. As I sat in the chair waiting for my highlights to sink in, I was bored witless. Hours passed. I couldn't imagine why I had been conned into agreeing to this free trial. I vowed that I would never, ever be tempted to have our highlights again, much less to pay money for them. They are, in addition to being time consuming, wildly expensive, naturally. But you will probably not be surprised to hear this. Those highlights were a little like the first sip of brandy Alexander that Lee Remick drank in the days of wine and roses. I emerged onto Madison Avenue with four tiny, virtually invisible blonde streaks in my hair and was so thrilled and overwhelmed by the change in my appearance that that I honestly thought that my husband wouldn't recognize me. As it happened, he didn't even notice that I'd done anything to myself. But it didn't matter. From that moment on, I was hooked. As a result, my hair drying habit now takes at least 3 hours every 6 weeks or so. And because my hair colorist is, in her world, only slightly less famous than Hillary Clinton, it costs more per year than my first automobile. It's a great book. You're welcome. I feel bad about my neck.
Yeah, this was a great way to start our move to the forest room. We've been in the auditorium for so long. Thank you, Lynda, for being our guinea pig. Jack Sasson will be reading A Tale from Ancient Egypt, The Two Brothers. He'll be reading from the fire from a second millennium soon, opening on a familiar subject, but quickly move in. Next week, here at the Forest Room at 4:30 on